This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Everyone, welcome to And Beyond Ngala. Look at what we've got early this morning. A Makoti young male leopard lies sleeping off the food that we found him with yesterday afternoon. He hasn't moved much since we got here. He looks like he is sleeping it off, so we are going to hang around and see how much more of this carcass is going to consume in a short while. Good morning, everyone. My name is Bunny. I've got Owen behind me on the camera. We are currently sitting with Makoti male, who is starting to show a little bit of activity. He is looking around because we can also hear some line contact calling just on the other side of the riverbed in this early morning. It's a beautiful morning. It's not as cold as it was a few days ago. It's going to be a beautiful morning. The sun is about to rise. And it sounds like there's been too much activity in and around the riverbed, hence why he's looking across. So from what we're hearing, remembering that we had the Pride of Lions, the Birmingham Pride yesterday, we hear only one animal contact calling. Coming to think of it, might be that young male, that limping one that we talked about, that we hasn't even seen him with the Pride in the last while. So if it's him, he will be on the right track because the Pride has just been around yesterday. So we don't know where they've gone today, but we're going to stick a little bit here to see what Makoti Male does with his food. A little later on, we're going to head on that direction, see if we can catch up with him. Maybe he's going to lead us back to where the Pride is. See, he is starting to look around. Birds are calling, everything is starting to waken up. At the moment you can see, don't worry if you see that we are on black and white. It's still quite dark and we're trying not to use the light. So we are in infrared, but maybe in the next 10 minutes or so the light is going to start coming up. So we're going to roll back into color. As we keep listening to this line contact calling on the other side, we'll just hold off here and stick around and see what happens.
Welcome everyone to a beautiful and peaceful Pridelands Conservancy while we wait here at Leopard Dam for any animals to come down. So lovely and peaceful and beautiful. My name is Michael Anderson. And behind the camera is Gert, and we are just waiting here whilst it's nice and quiet and cool to see if any animals make any contact calls, alarm calls that will give us an indication of where we can check this morning. But dams are always a good place to start out. It just starts the day on such a peaceful note. Let's just listen for a moment and see what we can hear. Well, we can hear some hornbills calling over to the left. Speaking of birds, let's send you over to a beautiful bird of prey.
Good morning and welcome to Juma Private Game Reserve on the western fringes of the great, not greater as I've said for the last 5 years, but great Limpopo Transfrontier Park. Thank you, Judy H. Yet again. What we have started with is a lizard buzzard. This is unfortunately beholden on BK to show you my face. Hello. And now his thumb. And back to the bird. Apparently, and there are two of them. You can hear them calling. fact, the other one is a grey hornbill, not a lizard buzzard. They're up in that tree there. I'm just going to see if I can find a picture for you, because the colour this time of the day when the light ain't so great is not good. Right, there is the lizard buzzard, or hawk, lizard hawk. Not sure why it's called lizard hawk. And you can see it's very similar looking to a number of the other accipiters, as we call them. Although, strictly speaking, this isn't an accipiter. So it's a small hawk. There we are. Normally it perches on, it says, on a concealed tree. It was really out in the open there. And what you're looking for when you see them is the red and the red, so a combination of red foot and red cere, but also this sort of strange single stripe that comes down from the base of the beak, which is totally distinctive. Without that, it is not a lizard buzzard, and with it, it is. Good. It's about a foot long.
We are now back at and beyond Ngala. We are still sitting with our young male leopard. There is his bushback carcass that looks like he's made a lot of progress feeding on it overnight. When we found him yesterday, there was still a lot of meat left, but looking at how much is left, it's just the front legs, the chest and the head, and he is slipping it off up there at the moment. Hasn't moved much. He keeps looking up across the river towards where the sound of that line is coming from. Here we go. His head up. Maybe it looks like it might cause him to move and maybe want to go down. Since we got here about 15-20 minutes ago, he hasn't moved much. He just keeps on lifting his head and look across like that. So he will have to come down at some stage to come feed again, or even come down to go drinking. So we're thinking we're going to stick around with him. As full as this bed is looking, something's definitely caught his attention on the other side just now. Look at how focused he is. Looking around, looking down at us, possibly thinking to himself, must I go eat while they're here? But we know he doesn't mind. Christy Makoti male, it's roughly between just over 2 years towards 2.5. He's still quite young, he's still got a lot to grow, but he's a reasonable sized leopard. He's still gonna grow a lot, but yeah, he's not supposed to be territorial as yet, but he's been making wonders. We've heard him rasping, so followed him marking his territory as well, which is a little too early for a young male leopard to be doing that. However, his father is not often around in this area, he is the dominant male of the area. So I think the young boy is just taking an advantage and want to be the big guy by doing all of those things. Look at how comfortable he's looking now on top of that branch with all legs dangling on either side of the branch, tail on the one side as well. Look at how long his tail is as well. It's even longer than all his legs. It's like this thing will touch the ground if he doesn't control it. Whatever he was looking at across the riverbed, he didn't think that it's serious enough for him to try and keep looking there. You can see how he's completely ignoring that idea right now. I always say that leopard makes trees look way too comfortable for my liking. I don't know how he can lie on the hard branch like that and look as comfortable as he looks. I don't care if you put pillows, anything you put there as a human, you will never be able to look that comfortable at all. Gently, different leopards, there is a lot of things that you can use to identify individuals. So firstly, the area where you find him with the territory. And secondly, if there is few more individuals coming through, there is what we call a spot pattern, which on top of their whisker line, they'll have different number of spots. Some will have 2, some will have 2, 3. And of course, the age as well, because Makoti made it's much easier to identify him. We saw him from when he was a little cub. And at this moment in time, there's not too many young male leopards of his age in this area. However, as they grow bigger, or if there is a lot of competitions, and every now and again, once they start competing and fighting for territory, they might have distinct scar markings on their face, the collar on their neck, which we can't see right now. It's often different. Some of them have got that looks like it's double necklaces or double collars, and some of them just only have one. So there's a lot of small features that we look at. It takes a little bit of time to actually get into the idea of being able to identify them properly. But yeah, that is at least some of the few smaller things that we use to identify individuals. Richard, great question. This is a great specimen of the tree. I don't know if I've mentioned earlier that we're not too far from the Timavati riverbed. This is a tree called the Jackalberry tree. Jackalberry is from the family of ebony trees. It's one of the trees that will often grow along this riverbank because they need too much water. And of course, being close to the river as we are, there is high water level at all times in these particular areas. And if you look at how dark the barks of the tree are looking, we are right in the middle of our winter now. Majority of our trees, the leaves are changing to brown and some are losing the leaves. But Jackalberry tree being in an area with a high content of water, they tend to keep their leaves much, much longer than most of the other trees. So the leaves are all still looking really, really, really green. So this is possibly one of the biggest trees we have in this property. If you look at the main stem and barks of the tree, it's not a small tree at all. The tree might have a couple of hundreds of years old. And you can see as well, it's situated right on the edge of the termite mound. Because at some stage, sometimes around July, the Jackalberry will have fruits. And these trees often start growing on top of the mounds because of birds going and feed on the berries and come and feed on the termites and end up depositing the seed in there. And that is most likely what would have happened in this particular tree. But that would have been a couple of hundreds of years ago when that happened. Our leopard is starting to give us a yawn. So leopard is starting to yawn, starting to stretch a little bit, looking up. Looks like he might start wanting to move around. Let's stick around and see while you go and look at a monkey in a tree as this leopard is in a tree.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to and Beyond Pinder Private Game Reserve. My name is Damon, and behind the camera we've got Marcel. And we've come out this morning into the open plains. Those of you that watched last night, you would have seen that we left the mother cheetah and her 2 youngsters resting in some long grass behind a bush, tucked away to get out of the wind. And we're going to see what we can find in the game this morning. But for the time being, we found a small group of monkeys. Have a look at that little one in there. Look at that little guy. Just scratching itself. And for those of you that might not have ever seen these kinds of monkeys before, See that very dark black face and then the lighter grey body? That identifies them as Vervet Monkeys. Look at this curious little one here, coming to investigate us. Coming right out then. Looking at us through the branches. See how it always keeps the sticks between it and us? Just keeping a bit of a barrier between us. And look at those massive thorns that it's climbing over. But yet it doesn't get thorns in its feet or in its hands because of how dexterous and agile it is. Thomas, you're asking if monkeys prefer specific trees. Thomas, yes, they will. So trees that are really big and that don't have many small branches on the way up to the canopy, those trees will be good for them to rest in at night because it means that things like leopards can't climb up the tree to come and catch them while they sleep. They also like trees that have got food for them. So trees that bear lots of fruit or seed pods, things like fig trees, and even these thorn trees. They'll be growing seed pods that these little monkeys can feed on. They also grow flowers. Okay, we are going to leave these monkeys for now, and we're going to keep on heading in the direction of where that female cheetah was yesterday. And of course, these monkeys can be very useful to us because if they do see a cheetah, they'll start to alarm call. So we'll be listening out for those sounds. But as we leave our little monkeys in their trees, we'll send you across to another animal in a tree.
This is our second quite fun little raptor. So it looks very similar to the lizard buzzard we saw earlier, but it's not the same. And again, the light is not perfect, and so you're going to struggle to see the difference between this and the lizard buzzard. I'll tell you that it's slightly smaller than the lizard buzzard, and it's a bit stockier. In other words, it's slightly fatter, and it's also got reddish eyes. Reddish eyes and a yellow set of legs, which you just can't really see right now. Anyway, this bird is called a shikra, which is quite fun. So very slightly smaller and very slightly stockier, I think, than the lizard buzzard. So there's the shikra. And this is a true accipiter, that's what we call these hawks. So he's got yellow legs and he's got a red set of eyes. And then, if I go back to the lizard buzzard, there's the lizard buzzard and you can see the difference. Nice. Yes, Pamela, the sky is as grey as the bird. It is not a particularly cheerful-looking day today, so far, in the Lowveld. I don't know what it looks like in the Kalahari or down in Maputaland, but here in the Lowveld of South Africa, it is most certainly quite grey. There must be some function for the red eye, but I don't know what it is. Quiet dawn chorus again. Some babblers calling to the left. Some Egyptian geese off to the right. Hello, Tamlin. It's quite difficult to tell how big it is from your screen, isn't it? The bird is 30 centimetres long, in other words, about a foot. And that's from the tip of its head to the tip of its tail. It doesn't look that big from where I'm sitting, but that's what the measurement in the book says. So about 12 inches, 1 foot, or 30 centimetres. it goes on the hunt. What it did was it flew toward the dead tree over there, which was quite nice. I think we'll continue on our way, see what else we can find, and let's go back up to the north to Ngala, where Barney is with his leopard in a tree.
So see, the sun started coming out. We got a little bit more light. So we have already come out of IR. So you're going to start seeing the beautiful colors as the sun keeps coming up. If you look at the leopard where he's lying, you can see the beautiful sun rising from the east. It looks like it's going to be a beautiful day indeed. The clouds are quite lower down, but it looks like they're going to burn away shortly. So slowly but surely, we will start seeing the sun coming through the leaves of this jackal berry towards where this leopard is lying. It's not too cold, but I think he will appreciate a little bit of sun in his face as it starts coming up. He's had his head up for a little while. He gave us 1 or 2 stretches. It does look like he's thinking of coming down, which will be a great thing. I think one of the reasons why he might have stayed up there for most of the time when it was dark, you might find that there's been hyenas here that they've been trying to see if they can scavenge his food, but fortunately for him is that he made a smart move of putting that carcass up a tree. And now that he can see on the ground clearly if there is any hyenas or no hyenas, he might be either coming down close to his carcass to start feeding, or he might just come down and maybe take a walk towards the water hole. Look at how beautiful or shiny those leaves are with the reflection of the sun coming up. So shortly it's going to be nice and warm, and that might force him to get a little bit more active or move from where he is down to somewhere else, either on the base or onto a different branch. Kylie's food is on the same tree as he's lying on, right on the fork there. You see the head and a little bit of the legs and the neck and the chest. It is a bushbuck. It was a young lamb. So the mother, when we got here this morning, the mother of this bushbuck was hanging around not too far from the base of the tree, looking like she's still checking around to see if she can find a missing baby. Unfortunately, that baby is not to be found because it is up a tree with this leopard. But yeah, it is a bushbuck indeed. So we're going to stick around with him a little bit more and see what he does. And let's give time to look for something else, maybe a scary looking spider.
Welcome back, everyone, and we're still on our search for this mother cheetah and her 2 youngsters. We've just come through a riverbed, and as we came up over the top, we spotted the golden orb web spider sitting in her web. And look at how beautiful she is. I know some of you might be a little bit perhaps scared of spiders, and perhaps this grosses you out a little bit, but have a look at how beautiful she is. She's got wonderful kind of orange and black bands on her legs. And then look on her back, there's those pairs of spots. Very, very, very attractive looking spider. And she's sitting dead still in her web. That's strung between those bushes over there. And she'll be waiting for any flying insects to fly into her web and get stuck. So Marcel has just spotted something. Let's see if we can see what it is. So there's quite a few little spiders in that web. Megan, you say that the pattern on the spider reminds you of a tiger. It does a little bit. It is kind of stripy like a tiger. But coming back to these little spiders that Marcel has spotted, the web is dotted with them, and it's quite tough to see now because it's so dark. But there's a lot of little spiders on this web, and like I said, this is the female, this big one here that we're looking at. The male golden orb web spider is much, much, much smaller than she is, and he'll live sometimes on the same web as she will, but he'll keep as far away from her as possible, because she's obviously out looking for food, and even though he's the same species as she is, if she's hungry and he gets in the way, he might become breakfast. So there'll be little male golden orb web spiders, but also a very special, or a very special looking spider called a dewdrop spider that looks like a little drop of morning dew, or like a small little miniature pearl, like a pearl on a necklace. And those spiders are parasites, which means that they use other animals to get their food. So just like a hyena might steal a kill from something like a cheetah, the dewdrop spider will wait for this big golden orb web spider to catch something in her web and to kill it, and to envenomate it, to pump her venom into its body, and then it will come and feed on that prey. How cheeky, eh? Oh, look what she's doing now. I wonder if she's caught something. Look at how she's using her legs. The web was kind of bouncing around a little bit there. I thought that maybe a little grasshopper or something had flown into the web, but it doesn't appear that that is the case. Also, have a look above her, everyone. There's that big kind of collection of stuff there. And that, having a closer look with my binoculars, it looks like a combination of things. It looks like there's some exoskeletons, so the cover, or the skin, if you will, of some of her previous victims, as well as a bit of debris and some added silk as well. So those are probably her previous meals, where she's captured them, wrapped them up, and then eaten them. Tasha, you are 7 years old and you're asking if any animals will eat the spider. Tasha, that's a very interesting question. And to answer it, let's have a look at what the spider is doing. So it's sitting out in the open, in the middle or in broad daylight, as these spiders do. And it's quite easy to see. It's not exactly well camouflaged. It's quite obvious and easy to see. So you would think that with a fat, juicy insect, or not insect, but a fat, juicy invertebrate sitting out in the open, that things like birds would come and eat them. But remember we spoke about those bright colors, those yellows and blacks, and very often animals that are colored like that, with very starkly contrasting colors, so yellow and black, or red and black, or red and yellow, it advertises that they are not good to eat. And that helps to protect them from predators. So, no, not many animals do eat these spiders. Although, there's a very close relative of the spider that occurs in Madagascar, and they get very, very big, and there people eat them. After they've been cooked, though, of course. Samuel, you're asking how big the spider is. It's quite a big spider, Samuel. I would say that in terms of its diameter across its legs, so if you were to make it stand on a piece of paper and then draw a circle around where its legs touched, it would probably be about the same size as a tennis ball, Samuel. Yeah, quite a big spider, but obviously that's thanks to its very long, spindly legs that make it that big. That body itself is maybe about the same size as my thumb. Yeah, so a very interesting little find. And like we said, this spider is sitting on this web waiting for prey to come to it. In the meantime, though, I think that mother cheetah and her two youngsters are going to be on the move, looking for prey. So I think we're going to leave this spider and we're going to see if we can find that mother cheetah and her two youngsters. In the meantime, though, let's go see what that leopard up in the tree is up to.
So our leopard hasn't done much since the last time. However, the tree is lying on the jackalberry tree. It's not the exact same tree, so he's been named Makoti, made a little bit of history background about where he comes from. He is the last offspring of a famous female leopard that used to be named the Black Dam female. So we gave him the name Makoti male as a reference name because he specialized at a young age by hunting vultures up in the trees, and he used to go after them all the way into the nest. So this particular tree now, I don't see any nest, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was one, if he started going after the vultures, because he is quite a pro when it comes to that. It's quite an amazing thing to see a young male leopard hunting a vulture, because how do you get close to a vulture in a nest without the vulture even knowing that you're there? So Can you pet the leopard? No, Alex, you cannot pet the leopard. These leopards are so wild, he will not let you anywhere close to where he is. As relaxed as he looks now up in a tree and look like he might be tamed, these animals are still as wild as you can get them. So even now that he's sleeping there and it looks like he's completely fast asleep, a very slight movement, if we touch the ground or do anything unusual, he will be ready to jump out and run off if given the distance is great and he feels comfortable to do so. But if you are in such a close range and you try such, you might not be able to get that close and you might get attacked by this leopard. A beautiful sign that we're hoping that it's gonna start shining up for him to maybe start moving more. Looks like it's just disappeared behind the clouds for now. But it does look like those clouds are gonna burn away sometimes this morning. It might take slightly longer than we first anticipated, but let's see what he's gonna do. Yeah, the leopard's camouflage is possibly one of the greatest camouflage you find out here. We know this leopard is there, but if you haven't looked carefully, he just blends in so well with the whole tree. And of course now without any light or anything like that, you could have easily driven past. But we were lucky yesterday when we found him. Some birds were distress calling, bushbucks distress calling, kind of pointed out into his direction of where he is. So while he sleeps, let's try and see. It sounds like we've got another leopard in a scene for this morning. Let's quickly head there and see what's going on down there. Maybe he'll be doing something different to what our friend is doing over here.
We have got another leopard. It is the great queen of Djuma, Tundi. Interesting behavior going on here. I'll just quickly tell you where we are. We're southeast of Djuma. And what's happened, she's calling, the cub's here. There's a drag mark coming out of Djuma, at least going out of Torchwood into Djuma. And what's interesting about that is that I think it's the kill from yesterday. I think it was probably stolen. I've just seen some movement over there, BK. Just keep looking over there. She's looking for the cub. I don't see any tracks. So a hyena came in and disturbed them last night. I'm sure the cub's okay. I'm sure it wouldn't have disturbed the cub, or I hope not. She's now walking on the drag mark. Doesn't look like a fresh drag mark to me. Let's carry on. BK, if you can just quickly put the camera down there so you can see the drag mark there. You can see exactly. You can see something was pulled along the road and her tracks on top of it. I'm just going to keep my distance because if she is calling, she did call once there. Yeah, she's calling. She needs to be able to hear a response, and the cub needs to be able to hear her. So I'm just going to drive carefully. And just keep our distance. Look on the ground here. Not sure why she'd be calling. Naturally, today is the day that Rusty's brakes decide that they're going to start squealing. You can actually roll down here. She's marking territory now. I can see the hyena. There, way down the road. Zoom in as far as you can. The hyena's carrying something. Is that as far in as we can get? Okay, so that's not a cub. So please don't worry that the cub has been injured. That is definitely, well, I mean, we don't know if it's been injured, but it's very unlikely. That is the carcass. So she's just lost it now. Bailey, she's only got one cub at the moment. She had two, a male and a female, and the female unfortunately died. We don't know how, but that's pretty common, you know, Bailey. It's very difficult for little baby cubs to survive. Now, you'll read in the textbooks that hyenas don't take food back to the dens. Absolute garbage. That hyena is walking a long way and it's going back to the den, I'm sure, with poor old Tundi's kill. At least they had a good night feeding on it. And she's got a big full belly, so they had quite a lot to eat last night. So every so often she stops, she marks a bit of territory, puts some urine on the ground, does a bit of scraping. All right, apparently we're now going to go off to some vultures. Let's go and have a look what they're looking at. I'm not sure where they are in the country.
We have carried on with our search for this female cheetah, and we've come upon a resting white-backed vulture perched up in that little tree over there. And looking at it, it looks like it's pretty hunched up. See how it's got its neck kind of squeezed to its body? And it almost looks like it's kind of huddling against the cold. Now this morning, I'm sure you can see in the sky beyond the vulture that it's pretty cloudy. We've got a layer of cloud that has been hanging over us the whole night and so far the whole morning. And it looks like it's slowly starting to dissipate. But as a result, it's not terribly chilly this morning. But what this means for this vulture is that with all this cloud cover overhead, because it's such a big and heavy bird, it needs the aid of thermals, of hot air rising off of the ground that comes from the sun heating the earth up. It needs those thermals to help it to fly. Being so big and heavy, for it to just flap its wings the whole time is going to be a massive use of energy. So it's going to want to wait until there's either a nice breeze blowing or until there's some thermals rising before it starts to fly around. And then it's going to go and scan the plains around us in search of any carcasses. Janice, who's 8 years old, you asking if vultures are good hunters. Janice, vultures typically don't hunt for themselves. So remember I spoke about that dewdrop spider sitting on the web of the golden orb web spider, and how that little spider eats food that gets killed by the bigger spider. That's pretty much what these vultures do. So they will wait for big predators like lions or leopards or hyenas or even cheetah to kill an animal, and they'll wait for the bigger predator to finish eating, and then they'll come down and eat the meat that's left on the carcass. And they've got very sharp beaks that they can use to help them to pull meat off of the carcass, and they've got long skinny, look at how small its head is for the size of its body. And although it hasn't got its neck stretched out now, they've got very long necks as well, and that enables them to get into all the different parts of the animal, of the carcass, to eat all the bits of meat that the bigger predators couldn't get to. Yeah, and so these vultures, because of the fact that they feed on carrion, on animals that have been killed by bigger predators, they can be a big help to us as we search for our cheetah this morning. Because if she does manage to kill something, once these vultures start to fly around, if they do spot that carcass, they'll start to fly down towards it. And they'll either land on the ground and start to gather around whilst waiting for the cheetah to finish, or they'll land in the trees and look around and wait for the predator to move off. Often in the case of cheetah though, if there are enough vultures, they are sometimes able to drive a cheetah off of its kill. Cheetah, obviously, as we've said many times, being kind of the smallest of the large predators, they don't do well with competition generally. And so if there's a lot of vultures, if there's enough vultures, they can chase a cheetah off of its kill. Alright, so that is the first 45 minutes of drive up. So kiddies, thank you so much for your questions, and you're still welcome to send them through, but now we're going to open up questions to everybody, and we look forward to them for the rest of the drive. Alright, we're going to leave this vulture, everybody, and we're going to keep on heading in the direction of where that mother cheetah and her youngsters were seen yesterday. So while we do that, let's go and see what that leopard at Ngala is up to.
leopard has just moved from his original position, got up, look around, he's just walked down back towards where the carcass is. Looks like he's thinking of either starting to feed or moving the carcass itself. Doing his background check, just sniffing it around. And from where we're sitting now, we can still see him nicely. But we do think that there might be a better position if we roll slightly around. But we're just going to give him time before we move just to see what he wants to do exactly. And then we'll try and think of our next best move. It's amazing what he is doing on the tree now, because it looks like he might be trying to move and looking like he's covering his stomach content, which it's possible that he might have opened that carcass up there, but what he doesn't know is that up a tree there is no sand or grass to cover it with. That what he was doing there, they normally do if they open the carcass up in the ground, and to try and avoid Kathy, definitely. So these leopards and lions or most of the other predators, they sometimes hunt and don't get anything even if they want to. So if they've already hunted and killed something or find it dead, they're not going to waste an opportunity like that. They will always go for it. Their system and stomachs are so strong that that little bit of offness of meat doesn't really do much onto them, so it doesn't bother them at all. So back to the story of what he was doing up in the tree area. You saw him, he just came down. It looks like he wants to come down. He's on the main fork of the tree now. There he is. He's just came down the tree. It looks like he might be thinking of actually even going into the water if he doesn't just want to lie down on the ground. So while we try and see or establish what he wants to do, we'll send you over to Lauren to say good morning.
Good morning, everyone. We are finally out and about, and we have came across a hammercup. One of the most unusual looking birds, I think. Looks like it's got a hammer for a head, which is exactly what the name means, I guess. My name is Lauren. I have Davy on camera today, and we're out a little bit later today. I've done a quick hyena den search, just because they have to be somewhere. They have to be somewhere, and one day we're going to come across them. And James just saw a hyena dragging a carcass, as I'm sure you all know, so I'm on it. We just wanted to stop to say good morning to the hammercup, and then we're going to race in the direction that the hyena headed. If the hyena's feeding with other hyenas, then there'll be a lot of vocalizations. Hyenas are very, very noisy during sort of feeding frenzies. If the hyena's alone, feeding on this carcass, then it might not be so noisy. So either way, we've got to race in that direction and try and see if we can find it. Okay, so I'm going to have a look, see if I can find where the hyena went. But for now, we're going to send you back across to James.
We're still heading in that general direction. Tundi is walking along the drag mark of her unfortunately stolen prey. Not sure what her plan is at this stage. She hasn't done much marking since last you saw us. We'll just gently drive along here. It's quite sweet. We saw two little squirrels sitting in a tree, and they looked at each other, the squirrels and the leopard, and the squirrels thought about alarm calling, but they were all snuggled and warm, and she put her tail up to say it's all okay, and they parted company. It's quite sweet. Hamla, I think that if this young leopard that Tandy's got now is raised to adulthood, I think this will probably be her last. You know, it may not. She may have another one. I mean, she could possibly have another one, but, you know, if all things being equal, she'll be 15 just about by the time this one goes independent and she can come into estrus again and have another one. There's no menopause or anything like that, so as long as she's in good health, she could have another one. If she loses this cub now, she'll almost certainly come into estrus again, and, you know, then she probably would have another one. So let's say last or second to last. And I say that full in the knowledge that I could be proved entirely wrong. Nanya, I don't think she'll try and get the kill back from the hyena, but because leopards being what leopards, they do scavenge. And so what I suspect she's doing is just walking along the drag mark and hoping perhaps that a piece of it or maybe the whole of it will be left in the ground. And if she has the opportunity to, what I like to use the word kaif, which means sort of steal quickly, if she has the opportunity to kaif it quickly and then drag it up a tree in front of the hyena, she'll do that. So yeah, I do think that this walking is along the drag mark is purely to see whether or not her hard-earned meal has been devoured and finished, or if there's an opportunity perhaps to steal some back. Let's turn the engine off. I know this isn't the best view of her, but I think trying to bash around and go in front of her would result in a disturbance for her morning patrol, which may or may not result in a meal. So we're just going to stay behind her for now until things open up. I don't mind the sight of a leopard walking like that. It's quite nice. And I'm sure, as Lauren told you, she's going to just try and come in from the other side, see if she can't pick up that hyena with the kill. The drag mark is still going along this road. And what I'm hoping is that if, well, the first prize for me would be if Tundi got a piece of it back again. But the second prize would be that the drag mark leads us to where the hyena den is, because we haven't known where it's been for some time. I believe that Barney's leopard is now out of the tree, so let's go and find out where it's going.
So our leopard has just come down the tree and has decided to lie down in this long grass. Looks like he's gonna start cleaning himself. He's still busy yawning. That he starting to give himself a little bit of a groom, just to keep himself nice and clean. Now that he can see clearly on the ground, I think it's a nice break for him to come down from this hard branch where he was lying. And now that he can see nicely that there is no hyenas on the ground to bother him, so he lies in this long grass. He's busy yawning now again. It doesn't look like he's gonna stay there for too long. I think his next best move here might be to get up and head towards the water hole. Look at how nice and pink his nostril is. So that pink nostril is looking away back up in the tree towards where the carcass is. Looks like he's not so sure. He's got a little bit of a doubt in his mind if his food is safe up there. But it is safe. We can reassure him for now. So look at the color of his nostril. So that pink color nostril, sometimes even if you don't know an animal, leopard or lion, you can be able to rough estimate their age that way. because anything from a year up to about 4.5, close to 5, normally their nostrils will still be pink. Anything from 5, 5.5 to around 6, then there is a mixture between pink and black. And then anything above that, the nostril changes the color completely to pitch black. Looking at the nostril of this guy, I was told you earlier that he's about 2.5 years old, but you can see how nice and pink that nostril is still. Back to the question that was asked earlier about how to identify a leopard, and I talked about spot patterning. If you look at the top whisker line, if we're zooming in, you can see the grass is disturbing a little bit to see the spot, exactly what I was talking about on the spot patterning. But if we go down to his chest, remember I also talked about collars, something that looks like a necklace on his chest. You can see on this one, he's got one big distinct one that goes across right at the bottom of the chest. If you go slightly up, he's got one that's slightly mottled and broken, just a little bit higher up there. So that is also something that you can use to identify these individuals. Every single one of them will have an identical necklace and spot patterning on the face. Looks like he's trying to pick up a smell of some sort by raising his head up like that. One thing that's quite amazing with this leopard, if he looks around, if you look closely, you see how long his whiskers are. His whiskers are seriously long. They reckon that those whiskers, majority of the time, they will be as wide, as long as his shoulder width. And I've seen leopards hunt when they move and they stealth and they focused on what they're trying to hunt. Sometimes they have to move in between twigs or logs, and they know that if they put their heads and those whiskers will touch either side, you'll see them backing out of the area because they know that their shoulders might not fit, or they might touch and make a little bit more noise, which they can't afford to do because they don't want to give their position away. So that is a big function of those whiskers. Looks like he's starting to doze off. Looks like now that he's in the ground and he's a little bit sure that the hyenas are gone. Maybe he's thinking of having a nice nap in this long grass here. But again, back to what we were talking about earlier about his camouflage. We know he's here and we are not too far from him. But if you haven't looked closely, you can easily miss him because the color of his spots looks exactly like the color of the grass. Every now and again, one thing that's a giveaway is that little bit of a white patch below on his chest and that white tip of the tail that you see on the distance on the camera there. See that? That is one distinct thing, and even when they're moving away, you often see that from a far off distance. But other than that, unless you know exactly what to look for, you can easily walk past a leopard. So we're going to stick around, see what his plan of action will be from now on, if he's going to keep on lying down or he's going to take us to the water hole. Just going to wait to see what he does and just stick around with him for a bit more.
Wild Earth relies on support from viewers like you to carry on broadcasting our daily live shows. A small donation goes a long way in helping us on our mission to connect the world with nature. Please visit our support page to see how you can help and become part of the Wild Earth family.
Good morning, everyone. We're just trying to get a better view to see what's going on out here this morning. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just winding everyone up. It's another, as you can see, spectacularly beautiful day out here at Swallow Kalahari, and Jandre and myself, Dylan, we'll be with you. Look at that light coming through the mountains there. It is going to be one of the most amazing days, I just know it. Our vehicles were sopping wet this morning. We had such a heavy fall of dew. So we actually stay right at the back of these mountains over here. So it takes us about 20 minutes to get here in the morning, so not long. But this side's relatively dry. That side, it was sopping wet this morning. The forecast that we had was for -2. It definitely wasn't -2 though. And they also said it was going to be windy. So far, there isn't a breath of air. If Jean casts over the grass and that here, these little bits of grass sticking up, you can see there's not a single bit of movement on these things. So I'm hoping it stays like that, because if it does, the meerkats are going to come out quite early this morning. And yeah, I think I've just got a good feeling about today. I don't know why, but then I guess I think I have that good feeling about every day when I'm in the bush. Yeah, so we're going to, and I'm also getting excited now, because I think, well, not think, I know it's getting closer and closer and closer to the time that these meerkat pups are going to be coming out. I think we're on like day 9 now, since they were born, 9 or 10. I must just check exactly when they were. But like I say, the time frame is about 2 weeks, sometimes earlier, that they'll actually start bringing these pups out. And this is really what we want to get. Marsha's asked me a very, very tough question to answer. Marsha's asked me, what is my favorite season in the Kalahari? Why I say it's a tough question is I absolutely love every single time of year out here. I honestly can't say I have an absolute favorite, this is the best one. But if I had to be like pushed into a corner and say, well, pick one, you have to. You don't have a choice. Like which month? Because our seasons like really like kind of like just run into each other. I would probably say September, October, around that time frame. And the reason I say that is then we're getting like migrant birds coming back. The temperatures are picking up. There's a lot of things starting to breed. The birds are going mad. Or January, February, once we've like really got into our good rains and that, because then there's tons of insect life around. The birds are still going nuts. So, but yes, everything's amazing. Look at these mirages that we've been having the past couple of weeks. I mean, you don't get that in summer. You know, in the middle of summer, you get these most spectacular thunderstorms, and you've actually got to be for me to try to describe it to you, it just doesn't do it justice. I mean, you've got to see this spectacle of nature on an absolutely immense, grand scale to truly appreciate it. And one of the things I like doing, and some people think it's a bit crazy, but when you get these big storm fronts rolling in, you stand up on these dune crests. So you got this high vantage point, and you're just looking as far as you can see, 360 degrees, and it's just these massive, massive cloud buildups, thunder, lightning. It is truly, truly, truly spectacular. So, yeah, I don't have a favorite season. Every single day I chose my favorite. Just waiting to see these little meerkats come up. Excuse me. But we're just gonna kind of settle ourselves here now, see where exactly we want to position for the lights and that. And while we're doing that, let's see what the other guys have got.
Welcome back, everyone. You've joined us just in time. Look at that. They're going so fast. Giving Marcel a hard time trying to keep up with them. So, thanks to our tracking vehicle, we've managed to find this mother cheetah and her 2 youngsters again. They're being super playful in the cool of the morning. And Mom looks like she's off on the hunt. Like we said last night, their bellies were all looking pretty empty. And so what Mom is going to be doing is she's going to be leading her 2 youngsters between all these thickets, hoping to flush maybe an impala, or in this part of the reserve we get steenbok as well. Either of those would be a perfect size prey. Look how playful they are. Even Mum joining in the game. I'm just going to move us ever so slightly, just to the gap in front of us, so we can have a better view of these cheetahs as they play. Look at that. So it looks like Mom has found a nice little open patch. Perfect spot to rest for a bit on that sand there without the grass poking her in her side. And also a wonderful spot to scan from. Look at the view that she's got here. She can scan for miles. Oh, and the youngsters just being super playful. Look at how they've got so much energy to burn. They're just keen to get going. Come on, Mum, let's go find some food. Look at how curious they are. Looks like they're investigating maybe a little warthog burrow. Tara, you're asking about the survival rate of young cheetah. And Tara, it increases as they get older. So when they're very small, depending on the area where they're from, it's not very high. I think up in East Africa, it's only about a quarter, maybe even less, of cheetah cubs that survive to adulthood. On Phinda, our survival rate of cubs from being born to independence is about 60%, if I'm not mistaken. So like I was discussing yesterday, this litter, or these two youngsters initially when they were born, there were 4 of them together. And unfortunately, in the 6 or 7 months that they've been alive, they've lost 2 of their siblings. But as I said, as they get older, their chance of survival is going to get better and better. And, oh my goodness, this is just too special. There goes Mom. All right, we're going to try and keep up with these cheetah. I'm sure that it's going to be a super fun morning following them.
Welcome back to Ngala and beyond Ngala. The young male that we've been hearing contact calling this whole time when we were sitting with a leopard, just across the riverbed, we just got a glimpse of him. He is the missing member of the Birmingham Pride that was not with them yesterday. He is moving slowly parallel to the river on the other side. He's just gone behind this thick bush now, but he should be coming out just onto the left-hand side of the thicket now. He hasn't been with the Pride for the last 4 or 5 days, and this area where he is and busy contact calling is the area where they were yesterday morning all day. So he was just too close from finding them. We're hoping that he might come down across the riverbed to the side where we are on for a close-up view. Can just listen to that. So you can hear he's starting to be desperate. Earlier on he was making a very low tone call, which is a contact call for if the rest of the Pride is close by. But now as the time goes, because he's been calling and calling with no response, he's starting to call louder, so he's getting more and more desperate. He might start even going slightly louder than that. Where he is walking now, compared to where the leopard is with the carcass, if he was 100 meters down and on a straight line, he was going to come across that leopard for sure. But the good thing smart thing that the leopard has done is that the carcass is up a tree, so he wasn't going to get there anyway. So, listen to this. A lot of people have been asking in the last few days about John, this is an injury that this young lion has had in a while. He looks like he's got a dislocated right back hip, if not left. It could have been, when we didn't really see it happen, but it could have been on a hunt trying to hunt things like buffalo, or it could have been anything really, but we're not really there to be able to see it. He's been like that for a while. He was actually looking slightly worse at some stage, but slowly but surely it looks like he is recovering. You can see he is putting a little bit of weight on that leg at the moment as he moves along. But I don't think that is an injury that he might have to live his whole life with. It doesn't look like he's going to ever recover fully to be back to normal again. Judy, the difference between a contact call and roaring, so the contact call is much more a sound that they use to communicate on a close range, in particular with the family members or part of the same pride. Like we've heard him calling, he's trying not to give his position away from what other lines or anything else that might be around. Whereas roaring is a territorial spacing call. They try and call as loud as possible. In our own ears, you can hear that sound easily anything between 6 to 8 kilometers. And in the lion's ears, it can be up to about 10, 15 kilometers because they can hear a little bit more than we can. And that way, they're telling other lions about their presence in the area and that the area is occupied. And that is strictly to avoid unnecessarily fighting. So it's like shouting and sending a message too far to say, hey, listen, I'm here, don't bother, come here. And when you do that, you want everybody else that's around to know and hear about this, because you're avoiding to fight if it's not necessary. However, this contact call is just a communication within family members to try and find each other. Hence why it starts very nice and soft. And as time goes, when there is no response and desperation kicks in, it starts getting louder and louder, which is what this young man has been doing for most of this morning. Beautiful sun on him right now, Looks getting quite warm. So we're going to stick around with him and see what he does. He's lying in nice grass there. He might get up and move a little bit more. It would be worth it to see. Maybe he might even take us to where the rest of the pride is. I don't think he knows that right now, but let's see what he does.
A herd of giraffe, or as some people say, a journey of giraffe moving in the distance just beyond the meerkat burrows. And it's actually quite interesting. I made a comment earlier about these incredible mirages that you get out here at this time of year. And you can actually see there's a bit of a shimmer on those giraffe over there. So that's kind of, in a way, a mirage that would be forming. So that's just the earth heating up. Actually, around the meerkat burrows here, there's a bit of frost. Very, very, very light dusting of frost. But it is here nonetheless. And so as that ground starts heating up, it'll create a bit of an unusual look on the picture over here. Just an absolutely glorious morning. Sure. We were hoping those giraffe would actually come closer. But we're just going to keep sitting here, wait for the meerkats to come out, and just absorb this beautiful scene.
Welcome back, everyone. You've joined us just in time. And remember, I said that this cheetah was on the hunt and that she'd be looking through the bushes for any signs of potential prey. We just watched her catch this grey duiker, and here she comes past the vehicle with it. I'm just going to reposition us so that we can see her nice and clearly. My heart is racing, everybody. We just suddenly saw her take off. And the cubs also started to run, and the cubs have gone. I'm not even sure where the cubs have gone. They ran in a different direction while she chased the duiker. I don't know if maybe there was a second duiker that the cubs chased after. But now that it's dead, I can hear them calling. I'm just going to reposition us, and then I'll switch off. So we'll just listen, see if we can hear the cubs calling. They'll be calling to their mother. Their mum's even calling, listen. I don't know if you can hear those high-pitched yelps. Calling to a youngster saying, I've got food for you guys, where are you? I can hear the cubs calling to mum. I apologize everybody if you are, if you are sensitive, now might be a good time to look away. Look at how she's dragging this carcass. Obviously not happy with where it is now, wanting to find a slightly better place to put it down where she can eat in peace. There, I can see a youngster. It's right, oh my word, it's far away. There's the two youngsters. They're way in the distance off to the left. Their mom's now calling them loudly. And the cub's answering. A high-pitched chirp. So apparently you were chatting about... Okay, so apparently you were chatting about contact calls of lions when you were with Barney. And Smith, you're asking if cheetah also contact call to each other like lions do. Smith, they absolutely do. And this is the call that they make. This is how they keep in touch with each other. That high-pitched kind of chirp or yelp. That's how a mother will call to her cubs. That's how brothers in a coalition will call to each other if they get separated during a hunt. Let's move again, everybody, so we can be there at the carcass when the youngsters come to join mum. Because they are on their way. Please hold on tight while we're off-road here. I'm just going to get us into this clearing and I'll turn us broadside. Here come the cubs, here come the cubs. So there's mum sitting. Look at how she's panting. She'll be breathing quite heavily after the exertion of that hunt. She probably chased that little duiker for maybe about 150, 200 meters. Look at her chest and how she's heaving. So after the exertion of that chase, there would have been the added little bit of exertion of her then having to kill that duiker, and she grabbed it by its throat. And Cheetah have a look at her head now that she's facing towards us. I don't know, you've obviously seen the lion and the leopard this morning with Barney. But compared to lions and leopards, they've got a much shorter head, very long head, very, very tall head. And so that very short head with a very tall skull has room for a muscle attachment that gives them a muscle that is, while it's not very strong, it's very good at locking, just like a bulldog or a bull terrier. And so when they grab a hold of the throat of that duiker, they'll lock their jaws and they'll hold on and suffocate it. Bio, you're asking how much does a cheetah need to eat? Bio, a cheetah can eat about 10 to 12 kilograms of meat in a sitting, so that's quite a lot. It obviously will depend on how big the cheetah is, so the bigger the cheetah, the more meat it'll be able to eat in a sitting. And if they're able to get that amount of food into their tummy, it will last them for quite some time. They'll be able to survive off of that for a couple of days, 2 or 3 days comfortably. So the cubs are also looking pretty out of breath because, like I said, I don't know what they were chasing, but they were chasing something as well, and it landed them way away from mum. Harley, you're asking if a hyena will recognize a cheetah's contact call. Harley, to be honest, I've never seen a hyena respond to a cheetah's contact call, or to a contact call of a lion or a leopard for that matter. But I would presume that the hyena would know what the contact call is. But because it's not 100% of the time that a contact call does mean that there is food nearby, because a cheetah might be calling her cubs for other reasons other than a kill. So there's not necessarily that association that every time a hyena hears a contact call, it goes to investigate. We're going to wait for the cheetah to recover, and I'm pretty sure that they're going to start to feed on this deka soon.
Well, we have a surprise. We found Ribbon, the culprit behind, well, Tandy losing her kill. So just a warning, the carcass is here, but it's slightly gruesome. So look away if you get grossed out, I guess. There we have it. This was Tandy's kill, I believe, and we managed to follow the drag marks and locate the one and only matriarch of the Juma clan, Rib Robs. It's so good to see her. She looks very fat and very uncomfortable. She's panting, she's too full. We all know that feeling when you have to unbutton the top button on your jeans. That's exactly what's happening to Ribbon right now. But a little bit of context here. We're actually at den number 3, which surprised me because Davy and I were here. Then we looped round to Treehouse, and then we heard the news that a hyena had stolen the carcass. So we just missed her. But there's no sign of cubs. We're actually at the back entrance. Or maybe this is the exit. Who knows? And I think if the cubs were here, they would be out by now. But I also don't understand why Ribbon would be here without the cubs. So I'm a little bit confused. And I think, although the scene in front of me is very gross and very smelly, I think we're going to have to stay here for quite some time. And if Ribbon does get up, I think we're going to have to follow her in order to find out where the cubs are. Unless the cubs are having a sleep-in. But I think with this smell and Mum's presence, they would be awake. So I'm really not sure where they could be. Or maybe Ribbon knew that she stole from a leopard and she just needed to get the carcass to the safest place to eat it. And then once she is slightly less full, she will waddle to the cubbies. We need to find this den. We need to know where they are. And it's not for the lack of trying. I promise the past few days you haven't seen me much. I have been going from termite mound to termite mound to try and find out where the cubs are. But to think what's left of this impala, Ribbon really has. I imagine she took it from Tandy when it was intact. You can see the pierce mark where Tandy's teeth, you see that around the neck? Chokehold. And then somehow Ribbon has heard this happening, or could smell something. They smell leopards, they follow the leopards. It's a great story to be able to piece this together. And somehow Ribbon's managed to use her strength. It's unbelievable. This shows you exactly how strong these animals are. Dizzy, you're asking how did we follow the trail to the den? We could see the drag marks. So because there's a carcass, hyenas are very strong, and they're actually strong at the front end of their body. And this is the Oh, will Tandy follow? Sorry, Dizzy. I got that question wrong. Most likely no. Tandy will give it up. Once a kill has been stolen from a leopard by a hyena, they normally just let it go. In my experience, it's gone. Ribbon's strong. She's big. She'll weigh about 90 kilograms. She could even possibly be heavier than Tandy. And this is a perfect example to show exactly why hyenas have this unique body shape, this unique anatomy. Really, really strong shoulder muscles, strong forelegs, and a long, elongated muscular neck. And it's for dragging. It's exactly sort of evolved this way for their scavenging lifestyle. And if they didn't have a strong forebody with that long neck, it wouldn't be so easy to drag. Now, James spotted this on Mamba. We are now at the den. She has dragged it really, really far through a block. We went into the block, we got lost, but we looped around again and we saw the drag marks. So she's exhausted. She's eaten it really quickly because she knows anything could come and try and steal it from her. So that's why they sort of gorge themselves, and now she's so full that she can't move. She's exhausted. She dragged it very, very far. Okay, so we're going to sit here and hope that we get some signs on where Ribbon's cubs are. But from this sadly dead impala, we're going to send you over to some alive ones.
Right, so yes, these impalas are a little bit more active than the one you just saw. They've just come down for a drink, and look at the exuberance. Look how they run around. They're so excited. It's been a very windy night again, and we've heard lions this morning in the distance, and we know there's been leopards coming to this dam during the night. So they are just excited to have been the lucky survivors, I suppose, of the night in this beautiful Pridelands Conservancy. And oh man, the light is just so pretty on these things, the reflection. Look at that one on the left, busy leaning right down to try and reach the water. So they don't know that there's no crocodiles in here. Well, I mean, I don't know that there's no crocodiles in here. And they're drinking at full stretch to try and make sure that they don't get caught by something lurking in the water. I think they're so majestic. They're so perfectly proportioned little antelope. Very, very agile and athletic. I don't know if you see the male there in the background coming down. He's been herding them away from the water for quite some time, but it seems these few females at the end just don't really want to leave just yet. Lots of running around, and I don't know, sometimes we see them doing something called pronking or stotting, where they bounce on their back and front leg, almost like a seesaw. And that's just a way to show off how healthy and fit they are. He's just making sure the last of his females are going to go. They do this roaring thing that you'll see just now if he raises his head and goes. Row, 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 row. Sounds like he's hustling them away. And if you see there? All the bouncing, lots of excitement. A lot of these are still quite young. So that one there on the right you can see is a young male impala, and the young ones are always very excited about everything, especially in the mornings. Did you hear that? That's the male roaring. See how he's fluffed his tail out? He does that when he's getting agitated. He's probably going to make that noise again in a moment. There you go. He's back and forth, back and forth. There's a few other males around the area, so he's still very nervous about losing his females to these males, but they're not really interested anymore. The rutting season, where the impalas are fighting over females, are finished in around mid-April. Around April, May time they would have finished that. And now he's just holding on to what he's got. See that impala stretching out there? Gosh, isn't this beautiful? Okay, it seems like he's finally got them on the run. Well done, old boy. Well, whilst this male moves his females back into the safety of the trees, let's head you off to some lazy meerkats.
Sounds like our colleagues have been having some incredibly good viewing. So I'm really, really chuffed for them. That's good news. The little meerkats have just popped out about 3-4 minutes ago. One actually popped out about 20 minutes ago, stuck its head out, looked around and said, no, this is not what he signed up for, and went straight back down the burrow. So these two have just popped out now. And there's also still, which is a very good thing, there's still no sign of any kind of predator activity in there. I'm talking, there's little mongoose and that have been around, but nothing that's going to be a threat to these meerkat pups. And I'm kind of like on tenterhooks here because, you know, what happened with that last group, the horses, you know, they had the pups, they were so close to coming out above ground that those honey badgers got to them. So I'm really, really hoping that nothing untoward happens to this little group. If any of you are wondering why I'm walking around, there's no disturbance to these animals whatsoever, and that's obviously what we strive for. That's always first and foremost in our minds. But just walking around is number one. We check for any sign of other animal activity in the night. There were giraffe around this area over here. They were actually feeding on these bushes right next to me over here. There's lots of tracks here, but no sign of predators. But also walking around, it just reinforces the habituation process where these animals become nice and relaxed and they just kind of ignore us. So there is a reason. I'm not ambling around aimlessly, I promise. But not this morning. So it'll be interesting to see which direction they go again this morning. And the other thing you'll see, I always try to keep my shadow off them because getting the sun early in the morning is very, very important. So I'll always keep that long shadow from falling on them. But we're just going to spend a lot more time here.
He stands up again. It has been a while. He's been so busy lying on the same spot, but he's been putting his head up like it looks like he's smelling. He's been looking around. Every now and again, he looks back too quick. It sounds like he might have heard another sound of a lion, but he hasn't responded to any of that. So what we make up of all of that, we're thinking that it could be the Ross males that are calling from a far off distance, which we know for a fact he will not respond to that sound. But if he thought it was the sound of the pride, I think he would have got up and headed on that direction already. So he's gotten up, he's just gone behind that bush now. It looks like he is still walking parallel to this riverbed. We're going to try and stay on this side of the river until we know for sure, we see for sure what he is going to do. In the meantime, while we do that from where he is standing, there has been head of impala just on the other side, which I doubt that he will try to go for because having a broken hip has slowed him down a bit, and I don't think he's done much hunting by himself. So it looks like he's just changed position. He's gonna sit down, still on the northern bank of the Timbavati River, and he's now facing on the opposite direction to where he was facing earlier. So, our guy has gone down. He's possibly going to stay down for a while. So let's move to something that's just gotten up and looks like there might be a little bit of activity there.
Hello again, everyone. So the cheetahs seem to have recovered a bit from their exertion, and it looks like the two youngsters are now starting to take a bit more interest in the carcass. So the youngster on the left was actually the one to drag it out of that bush that it was in, and he's pretending to kill it. He's practicing his bite, that bite that I spoke about earlier. He's practicing his strangle hold on that duiker's throat, and it looks like the little one on the right and even mom now too are going to start feeding. So to orientate you, the cheetah on the left is where the head of the duiker is, and the cheetah on the right is where the rump is. And see how that's where that one little youngster is starting to feed. Look at how it's turned its head sideways, and it's using that carnassial shear, her specialized molars in the back of her mouth, to cut through the skin and to get to the meat around the rump. that being the biggest muscle on this little dacre. Look at that young male there, practicing his stranglehold again, grabbing a hold of the daca's throat. Look at that. So again, I apologize, everyone, if you are sensitive. Would be a good time to look away. But this, what he's doing right now, this is very important practice for one day when he leaves his mother and has to kill by himself, or kill for himself. But even the young female also just grabbing the carcass, different places.
I wonder, would females that specifically while teaching them to strangle go for small animals so that they can get their jaws around the neck?
That's a good point, Marcel. I don't think that was the case in this instance, though. This was purely opportunistic. Look at that young male pulling the carcass around. But it's an interesting point you raise, Marcel, because often we've noticed that when mother cheetah in this area give birth, it's often at a very similar time, and it coincides with the youngsters going independent, kind of 18 months or so from when they're born, at around the time when there are lots of impala lambs around. Time of year when there's lots of easy prey for her youngsters to catch and kill. And a time of year when also just prior to them going independent, lots of opportunity for her to catch things for them to practice their killing on. So initially what I thought was going to happen, because when she caught this dacre, everyone, she didn't initially kill it. She was holding on to it for quite a while, and it was bleating and it was struggling, and it was, I apologize for the graphic image, but she didn't kill it immediately. And she kind of looked around, looking for her youngsters, as if she was waiting for them to come and join her, as if she wanted them to, saying, come on guys, where are you? You need to come and practice your killing skills on this thing. But when she, like I said earlier, it looked like the youngsters went off on their own mission. I think there may have been two dacres, because they chased one thing in one direction, and obviously Mom chased this dacre. So they were nowhere to be seen when the killing needed to be done. And I think she just decided they were too far away, and she killed it herself. But there, look at that youngster. It looks like now the young male that's now positioned himself at the back of that dacre, and he's starting to chew, starting to gnaw away at the rump, opening up the carcass. And the little female's taking her turn in dragging it around. Toby, you're asking how long it will take them to finish this kill. Toby, between 3 cheetah, I think that this carcass will be gone pretty soon. Once they all start to feed, and if they fed pretty consistently, Toby, I think that if you came back here within maybe an hour, maybe an hour and a half, there wouldn't be much more for them to eat on this carcass. But see how now they're not really interested in feeding. The cubs are still taking this opportunity to play with their food, if you will. And while that does sound horrible, like I said, this is imperative that they do this to practice their hunting skills. And look at Mom and how alert she is. She hasn't, with the exception of when you first joined us, she hasn't gone to that carcass and really looked interested in it. She's more worried about just keeping vigilant and scanning around herself, making sure that there's nothing potentially dangerous in the area that might try to rob them of her kill. And we spoke about that quite a bit earlier with the hyenas that you saw stealing from that leopard carcass with James. And we even spoke about it now with that vulture in the tree. Because if there were a big enough group of vultures even that spotted this kill and came down, even they would be able to push these cheetah off of this kill. So Mom will want to make sure that there's nothing nearby that could try and steal their kill or even endanger her life or her cubs' lives. And then they'll want to finish this kill as quickly as possible from there on. Once they start to eat, they'll fill their bellies. And like I said, once they do that, I don't even know if all 3 of them will be able to fill their bellies off of this little dacre. So So it now looks like the cubs have discovered that there is food to be had here, and their tummies have won up their urge to play, and they've started to feed. And we're going to stick around and watch the proceedings. Maybe we can even start the stopwatch now and see how long it takes them to finish this carcass.
Wild Earth relies on support from viewers like you to carry on broadcasting our daily live shows. A small donation goes a long way in helping us on our mission to connect the world with nature. Please visit our support page to see how you can help and become part of the Wild Earth family.
We back with our leopard, who has performed some smart move. Of course, he heard that lion contact calling, and from where he was lying down when we left him, where it looks like he wasn't going to go anywhere anytime fast, he decided to come right on the base of the tree. So, of course, he cannot really judge the distance with the sound of that lion as to how far this lion is, but the fact that he can hear the noise kind of alerted him a little bit. So it doesn't look like he wanted to go back and sleep up in a tree. Of course, the ground looks like it will be a little bit more comfortable than the branch itself. So he came and lied down right on the base of the tree, getting himself ready. That should that lion come any closer and he sees the need to get away off the ground, to be away from everything else, he doesn't have to run any further. He's just going to jump up and back to his safe haven, which will be back up in the tree. So that is a smart move indeed from his side. And since we came back to him and we're sitting here, every now and again he keeps on looking up, which kind of makes us think that he might be even thinking of going back up. Look at that. Looks like it's discouraging himself again. So we're gonna stick with him for a bit. We have not heard that lion calling in the last 3 minutes, but chances are that it's gonna keep calling. He was still in the riverbed. If he calls again and sounds like it's getting closer while we're sitting here, this leopard is most likely to jump right up and go up a tree. So we're gonna wait with him for a bit and see what he does. Doesn't look like he's got a peace of mind at all. He keeps on listening, his ears keeps twitching. He wants to pick up every single detail that there is to hear about this potential danger. So we're gonna wait with him and see what unfolds.
Talking of relaxed, my hyena, Miss Ribbon, is also very relaxed. She pops her head up now and again. She knows that this is a fresh carcass. That smell is going to be filling the nostrils of many other hyenas if they're in the vicinity. It will attract attention from other scavengers, be it hyena, maybe even potentially some vultures or birds of prey. And Ribbon is well aware of that. So every so often she pops her head up. We've heard no squittering. Squittering is the sound of cups. And we've heard saw. We've not seen anything. No signs of movement. No little heads popping up. I'm just not convinced the cubs are here, but I can't think where else they could be. We have been everywhere. So she's hiding them well. So it may not be the most riveting morning watching Ribbon sleep, but I think it's really, really important. You've got to put the groundwork here at Djuma. You've really got to track things and find things and follow the story. And we've managed to find the carcass. But as to where the cubs are, I do not know. Neva, you're asking when did they move to this den? I'm not convinced they're still here in this den. But this is Philemon's Dip Den 3. It's a bit of a mouthful. And the natal den was definitely Philemon's Dip Den 2. And then it sort of became the communal den. And only recently have we moved to this one. I would say maybe by about a week, 10 days. And it's really not far from the other one, not far at all. And hyenas do move dens regularly. And the main reason is the sort of parasite load. It's dirty, it's smelly in there, they urinate, the cubs potentially defecate. little bits of meat get inside, and it becomes quite, well, unpleasant, shall we say. So I'm not sure if they have moved or not, but we're definitely going to sit here for now and wait it out.
So we got 3 that are out now, but there were 2 others that had also popped out, and they've just gone back in. But it's warming up beautifully now. It's warming up very, very quickly. And then Veronica Meerkat Habituator was saying that there's another group of meerkats, the horses, in fact, that we'd been following a couple of weeks ago, that had stayed in a burrow about 100 meters in that direction, which is east of us. I'm glad I got that right, because that's where the sun rises. I had to think about that a bit. But yeah, so that's interesting that there's another group very, very, very close by here. And obviously this group's going to be on high alert now. Now the fact that the alpha, which is the middle one of these 3, she's the alpha. One looking back over her shoulder. And they'll be on high alert for any kind of other groups approaching the area. Rita has asked an interesting question from an animal monitoring perspective. Do any of these meerkats have GPS collars? Absolutely not. We haven't got any meerkats, and we've never had actually any meerkats collared. There are places that have done that. One notable place is the Kuruman River Reserve, where a meerkat manor was filmed. Many of you may be familiar with that, but that is intensive research. That is unquestionably the best long-term study on meerkats that has ever been done anywhere. But like I say, that is a research thing. One should never be interfering with animals just for no reason whatsoever, and especially for tourism. I mean, if you're going to be working or collaring animals, there needs to be a very, very, very good reason for doing that. Okay, they are looking at something down there. I cannot see what it is. So my binoculars also missed it up this morning. And I think probably in about 20 minutes, it all should be vaguely okay to use again. Just such charismatic little animals, eh? You can watch these for hours and hours and hours. But we must try to find what is down there. Anyway, we'll keep our eyes open and see if anything pops up there.
The 3 cheetahs have now started to feed everyone. So Mom, obviously, having decided that the coast is clear for now, and she and her 2 youngsters have started to tuck into this daycare. And it's a bit tough for us to get a view of the carcass for now, just because they've kind of, again, it's such a small little young daycare that they've kind of surrounded it on all sides. We can't really see the carcass, which I don't think is too much of a bad thing. But we've got this stopwatch going. They're about 10 minutes in. And they're feeding not super hurriedly, but they're not exactly taking their time either. They eat for a few minutes and then stop to look around, take a bit of a breather before putting their heads back down and feeding again. See already this young female cheetah in front of us, the one that's now got her head up. See how she's already starting to pant a little bit? Her brother, who's now got his head up, not so much. Oh no, he's also opened his mouth. And already that little tummy is starting to look a little bit fuller than it was earlier. He seems to be torn. What's going on, little guy? Torn between eating and just deciding he needs a bit of a timeout. Only so much eating you can do in one go. Perhaps because it looked like he was feeding towards, so again, to orientate you in terms of the carcass, where the young male is lying on the right, his rear end is kind of where the daker's head is. So Mom and the female cub are feeding on that nutritious and super meaty rump that I spoke about earlier. They've got the kind of the big portion of the carcass, and he was feeding up towards the neck. So he may have been eating kind of the neck area, maybe even the shoulder. which is quite a bit less meat than on the rump, so he may have already finished that. TaylorMade, you're asking how long it will take for a cheetah to digest its food. TaylorMade, they've got a very, very fast metabolism. And so if a cheetah is able to fill its belly, so eat to the point of looking like it's fit to burst, that meal will probably last it for comfortably 3 days, and maybe even a little longer afterwards. I've read reports of cheetah that went for up to 11 days without food, but that's a very long time, and those cheetah would have no doubt been very, very skinny, very emaciated at the end of that. So about 3 days, maybe 3 days or so to digest a full belly, TaylorMade. And look at how when they feed, I'm sure we've seen with lions and how they fight a lot over a carcass, even when it's mothers and cubs and pride mates. Look at how orderly these cheetah are when they feed. There's no snarling, no hissing, no growling, no swatting. Justin, you're asking if these cheetah will eat the bones as well of a carcass. Justin, typically speaking, I spoke about the design of a cheetah's jaw and how their heads are much smaller than something like a lion or a leopard or a hyena. And they haven't got that same big crest on the top of their skull that's designed for pure crushing power that a hyena or a lion has. They've got a very tall skull, which has got that muscle attachment that allows their jaws to lock, but it's not designed for crushing. So, Justin, they won't eat the thicker bones. In a small young animal like this duiker, they might eat some of the softer bones, some of the cartilage around the ribs, but they won't eat the big major bones like hyenas or lions would. I'm going to keep quiet for a second, everybody. Just while they're busy feeding, we can actually hear them cutting through the skin. So let's just listen for a second. I don't know if you could hear that. Very subtle. It almost sounds like a pair of scissors cutting through thick paper. And that's what I was talking about earlier. It's that carnassial shear, those specialized teeth in the back of their jaws that they use to cut through the meat and cut through the skin, working exactly like a pair of scissors to shear muscle off muscle and muscle off bone. Oh my goodness, and see how twitchy she is? Just a little rustle in the grass, and immediately Mom turned around quickly to see if there was anything approaching them. But looking at this now, I don't know if you guys can see on the left-hand side there, it looks like they've already cleaned up the rear end of the duiker. Jennifer, you're asking if cheetahs' tongues are able to remove fur from kills like lions' tongues do and leopards' tongues do. Jennifer, they typically don't do that like lions or leopards would, or mainly leopards, I suppose. They do have rough tongues, but it's not typical for them to lick the fur off of the carcass or off of the area where they're going to start feeding before they do so. But they do have very rough tongues. I suppose if they did lick an area of the carcass consistently for long enough, it would start to remove the fur. They've got almost like little hooks on their tongues. And if you ever get the chance to look closely at a cheetah's tongue, you'll see it literally looks like a whole bunch of little hooks, kind of opaque hooks across the top of the tongue. So very rough. Here we go. You might there be able to see a bit of the carcass there. See where that young female is now feeding. I'm going to use my binoculars just to have a closer look and see how how they're doing there. So I can see it looks like they've finished the left hind leg of the Jackal already, between the mother and her daughter. And from there they'll probably work their way along the back onto the soft meat in the abdominal region. And they might leave the internal organs alone. The stomach, that will probably be left. There we go, mom adjusting. Okay, there we go, look at that now. Now we can see much more clearly. You can even see the stomach there starting to come through the stomach wall. Again, I apologize everyone, I know this is quite graphic, so if you are sensitive, please do look away for now. My goodness, look at how those cubs, they've already worked through the shoulder of that Jackal. And we are going on 16 minutes, everybody, since they started to feed on this carcass. So Rebecca's raised an interesting point. Let's watch the cheetah when they next get a mouthful off of that carcass. Rebecca's just remarked that it doesn't look like they chew their food very much once they've actually cut it off of the body. So let's watch. Watch mom on the left there, she's busy feeding. She's got, oh, there's been a sound, something has disturbed them. Just lifted their heads now to scan. Look at how their ears are all pricked and they're all looking in different directions, making sure that they've got a 360-degree awareness about themselves. Okay, let's watch. Let's see if they do chew their food. I think now watch the little female on the right. Oh, but she hasn't really got the meatiest part of the carcass there. They've absolutely cleaned just about to the bone, the shoulder, and that little female's even now chewing on that bone, trying to get the last little bits of meat off of it. But Rebecca, typically no, they won't sit and chew like we will, because they cut off. They kind of, instead of how we'll put some food in our mouth and then we'll chew it into swallowable or manageable sizes of kind of like little balls of food and then swallow those down. They'll kind of do that in this process that we're seeing now when they're actually cutting the meat off of the carcass. Might be a little bit of chewing on the way down, but it's not going to be the same as us, or as we often see with herbivores when they chew up leaves or grass. Of course, protein, which is obviously that doesn't need as much chewing as vegetable matter does. The cells in an animal there's no cell walls that need to be broken down like they are in plant cells, which is why herbivores have to chew their food so much. Why they've got to have such efficient or such big teeth and Okay, we're going to, again, we've got our stopwatches going. So we'll give you a break from all of this gore for now, and we'll call you back if anything changes.
Someone who definitely doesn't need to chew her food very much is Ribbon. She will take huge chunks and just swallow them whole. It's really, really easy for Ribbon to eat fast, and that's because they have to, because of their lifestyle as scavengers here. Hyenas do hunt, please do not get me wrong, they're fantastic hunters, but they just don't tend to hunt so much in this area. Cammy, I would say so, although with the hyena's stomach, I'm never so sure when they're full. I have seen hyenas, especially Waffles in the Masai Mara, not being able to sit or put her front legs on the ground because she's so full. So I think Ribbon's relaxing because she's exhausted and full, but sometimes I think it's a bottomless pit, their stomach. And it's because most carnivores here live a lifestyle of feast or famine, especially the lions, leopards, and hyenas at least. They can go days without food. Days upon days, and then of course they will successfully kill something and then they feast. So it's not like humans who eat regularly or at regular intervals every day. It's different. So when the opportunity does arrive, hyenas will completely go for it. And I think if another hyena was to appear in front of us right now, Ribbon would get up and try to eat the remains of this poor impala. This competition, even between clan members. And for the cubs, they have an extended lactation period, and their jaws don't really spring properly into action until 2 years old. So the cubs have got a long way to go before they will start crushing through bones. And the cubs are at the 3 months mark now, which means we should be able to get a spot pattern from them soon. And then we can really, really identify who is who. When you watch hyenas hunt in the Masai Mara, where they tend to hunt a lot more than they do here, and it's due to the landscape, the environment, it's very, very different. They can't rely on scavenging up in the Masai Mara. It's incredible to watch them coordinate and cooperate as a clan to make a successful hunt. They can also swallow hair, lots of hair from mammals, and hooves. They normally regurgitate it later, which is not so pleasant, but they can swallow it. And then once the digestion process has started, they'll regurgitate hairballs and hooves. I'm really, really hoping that another hyena is going to appear, or we get some sign of the cubs, so we're going to sit tight and continue to wait it out.
So I believe our colleagues were chatting about hyenas and what their stomachs can digest. Somewhat different to what these little meerkats can do. But I'm hoping as this group becomes more and more relaxed with our presence, we're actually going to be able to start following them when they go foraging a little bit going forward over the coming weeks. And that's when it becomes super exciting, because then you actually get them like regularly making kills. And I'm talking about sometimes they'll dig down to get something like a scorpion or a big worm. They'll dig down deeper than their body length. They'll disappear completely underground and haul these things out. And also, if we're able to follow them while they're foraging, again, there'll be no impact on the animals whatsoever. But that's when you start getting these chance encounters, possibly with predators and with other meerkat groups. And there's just some hornbills flying far. We're not even going to go to them. They're miles away. But immediately those hornbills took off and started flying. These meerkats started looking there. They were onto them. I've sat with meerkats before where I literally could not see what they were looking at, but they were staring at something alarming, and about 2 or 3 minutes later a martial eagle came into view. So their eyesight is incredibly sharp. That's their key sense. Okay, we got 5 out here. That's their key sense. Okay. So we still got one that needs to pop out now. The one on the furthest right, not the one that John is framed on. It's just one way out to the right hand side of the screen over here. You won't see it. But that's a very nervous one. And he's actually just super relaxed this morning, which is really encouraging to see. So often you get these nomadic animals that'll join up with a group, and they often not habituated. Justin has just asked, what other animals eat meerkats? The answer is a lot. when you're this size, in this kind of environment, you are pretty much fair game for anything with teeth and claws, or a hooked beak. And some of the key predators on meerkats are your aerial predators, so things like martial eagles, pale chanting goshawks. If you were with us when we saw the lions on that eland kill a couple of days ago, or 2 days ago, we actually had a very, very brief look at a pale chanting goshawk. Those are active predators on meerkats. And then in terms of ground-based predators, snakes are always a big threat to the little pups, things like Cape cobras, puff adders, and these big monitor lizards. They look like miniature Komodo dragons. They'll go down burrows after pups. And then your cats. Caracal, African wildcat, leopard, they'll take them. Jackals, okay, they're not cats, but in terms of ground-based predators, jackals are certainly not averse to schnaffling a meerkat if they get half a chance. So these little guys really got their work cut out for them. And this is not like a rosy-tinged world that they live in, and they got cute pups and everyone lives happily ever after. You know, there's a lot of pressure on these groups. You know, from predation, there's a lot of pressure in terms of actually just getting enough to eat every day. You know, to go out here and you've got to be searching for your food. And like, so we are in the heart of winter now. There's a bit of kind of wispy grass around, but the environment is just becoming more and more harsh by the day. And the crunch time, I'm actually glad they've had their pups now. Normally they having pups in the summer months when food is at its optimum in terms of abundance. But these ones, we had a fairly good rainy season, so there's still enough food around for these youngsters. But the key time out here in the Kalahari is October, late September, October, sometimes even going into November, when the temperatures are skyrocketing and there's no rain yet. And that's when the pressure's on for anything foraging out here, whether you're a herbivore or a insectivore, anything. If you've got teeth and claws and you're trying to find food, it becomes a challenge. I'm still waiting for number 6 to come out, but we'll just give it a bit of time. There's absolutely no rush. I'm thoroughly enjoying myself, and I hope you all are too.
You have joined us at minute 27 since these cheetahs started to feed on this little grey duiker. And they're still eating pretty much constantly, just occasionally lifting their heads to look around, make sure that there's nothing ominous approaching. See that young female there now looking up and looking around, and her breathing has gotten heavier and heavier with each mouthful of food that she takes. We've often spoken about predators and full bellies, that those tummies or their bodies start to heat up quite a bit with all that blood rushing to the stomach to help them digest. And look at that. Still got a bit of blood around her mouth. I think they all do. And once they've finished feeding, they'll probably go and lie down a little ways away from their carcass, and they'll lick each other using the hooks on their tongues to clean the dried blood off of each other's faces, and also to strengthen their bond as a little family unit. Now, I believe that Dylan was speaking about the habituation process with meerkats, and how important that is if we are to spend time with, or if we are to spend time with meerkats. It's much the same with these cheetah, and this time that we spend with these two youngsters is very important, of course, because the more time we spend with them and the more that they learn that this vehicle and that our voices in the vehicle are no threat to them, the more relaxed they'll be around us, and the less of an impact we'll have on their behavior. And so these cubs, even from a young age, from probably about 3 months old, they would have been exposed to vehicles, and we obviously would have been very careful with them, At first, only one vehicle at a time, and then as they got more and more relaxed with one vehicle, going to 2 vehicles at a time. And just from there, they've obviously learned that we pose no threat and that we bring them no benefits, and so they kind of just ignore us in their environment. And as a result, we're able to get these fantastic images and get that much better of a look into these cheetahs' daily lives.
We have just popped down to Treehouse Dam, which is about 100 meters away from Ribbon, just because we could hear some elephants. So we wanted to see what was going on. And there's no elephants. But we do have some warthogs. Oh, they're running away. We never tend to get visuals of warthogs for too long. I can still hear the elephants. We're going to go back to Ribbon, don't worry. We just thought we might come and check the dam. I can hear them, but I can't see them, which is bizarre because they are the largest mammals here. But their grey bodies actually blend in very, very well. So I think we might have to follow their sound. But I promise we are going to go back to Ribbon. Just thought it would be nice if we could come and see some elephants for the morning. Especially on a cold day, sound travels further, so that it can actually make any sort of sound you hear, from a leopard sawing, a lion roaring, or contact calling, hyena swooping. It can make them sound a lot closer than they actually are. Okay, we're going to do a big loop here. Hopefully we can find some elephants for you, and then we will loop back to Ribbon.
So Lauren was actually chatting about contact calls and, you know, how they can sound further away than they really are, or vice versa. But so these little meerkats got a huge range of contact calls as well, or calls, let's just say calls, because you get obviously all different kinds. So some of them are literally just contact calls within the group. But then for me, the interesting ones are the calls linked to the threat of predation, and they give a whole range of different ones for that. We were watching the horses a little while back, and a jackal came trotting past in the distance, and immediately we call it a bark, but I mean it doesn't sound anything like a dog's bark. But the entire group sits watching, and they start giving this like little barking, yapping sound. And yes, it's pretty cool. But the thing is with the behavior of the meerkats, when they giving an alarm call, there's different levels of alarm calls related to different levels of threat. So let's say, for instance, one of these meerkats saw a martial eagle or a goshawk coming in low level, even at 200 yards distance, but headed straight towards the colony. It's going to give this short, sharp bark, and regardless of what the others are doing, even if they've got the biggest, fattest, juiciest scorpion in the world, they will drop that immediately and go underground. And then, you know, that'll be very, very different to one that sees a raptor sitting on a tree in the far distance, not doing anything. They'll be like, all right, we've got you, we can see you. And that contact call or that alarm call is given to the rest of the group. So, guys, just be aware there is something down there, but there's no immediate threat. So they've got all these different kinds of calls. We touched on it very, very briefly yesterday. We got a beautiful little bird here called a fork-tailed drongo. And those birds that actually twigged on, they'll follow groups of meerkats because they're they're predatory birds, so they'll go for insects, scorpions, anything pretty much. They've twigged on to following meerkat groups around. We've never seen it with this group of meerkats. But what this particular group, but what these birds do, they'll follow a group of meerkats around, and when they see one's actually got a food item, it'll issue an alarm call that sends the entire group scampering underground. Bird flies in, grabs a food item, and leaves. Now, how is that for that ability to actually link? Okay, because it's got to really observe these meerkats very carefully to say, okay, well, all right, that sound given meant that everyone dropped it, and they keep leaving this food item. So if I can mimic this, let me try it. I mean, that process really raises questions about animal intelligence and how they perceiving things and putting things together. I think that's absolutely remarkable. And like I say, we don't get drongas in this particular area, this colony. It's like a big, wide, open, exposed area. You tend to find them further down towards the mountains in the distance there, where there's very dense woodland. But you never know. Maybe we'll be lucky enough to see something like that. There's some nice burrow maintenance going on there. Good question, Michael. Michael has asked, if you get an unhabituated member of the group, or one joining, will it make them more nervous? Yes and no. And I know that sounds kind of like ambiguous, but it's what happens is that, take this group for example. We know this alpha female, which is the one on the far right-hand side of the frame now.
Welcome back, everyone. We apologize for that. There's a bit of a technical issue. We are, of course, out in the middle of the African bush, and so can never predict exactly what will happen with signal and stuff like that. And that's part of the challenge, but I suppose can also be part of the fun sometimes. So you've joined us just at, where are we now? Minute 36 that these cheetah have been feeding, and I must say this daycare is starting to look less and less like a daycare and more like a skeleton. Look at how the two cubs have now both moved away from the carcass, and they're both lying on this little patch of earth. Their tummies not super full, but it looks like they've had enough for now. Beach Boy, you're asking if the cheetah will lick the carcass clean. Beach Boy, they typically won't. Oh, listen to Mum crunching through the ribs. Remember earlier we were talking about how she might eat the thinner bones on a small daycare like this? That's exactly what she's doing. Sorry, Beach Boy, to continue answering your question. She will, to a certain extent, Beach Boy. She'll lick away at the meat that surrounds some of the bones, like the ribs, where there might still be quite a bit of meat. Also on the femurs, so around the rump, she'll lick those bones too. But they won't kind of fuss over it as much as something like a lion or a leopard would. And very often cheetah kills can be identified by how intact they are and by how it looks like something like a very picky eater has eaten away at it. Whereas with something like a hyena or a lion, often the bones are strewn all over the place and there's bits of hide lying here and there. With a cheetah, it's often pretty much still intact. And I think that, Beach Boy, Mum is now getting to the stage where there isn't very much meat left on this carcass, and so she's just trying to get every last little bit of nutrition she can from it. Which is why she's started to gnaw on those thin rib bones that she's able to break with her teeth. If it were a slightly bigger animal, she probably wouldn't even get the chance to start feeding on those bones. The meat will have filled her up. It's always interesting watching young predators when they're finished eating. If they're lying close by to a carcass, it's amazing how they almost sometimes look like they cave into to peer pressure, so to speak. So if they see one of their siblings feeding, it's almost like they get jealous and say, oh, I also want to go back and eat. Or, oh, maybe there's some more food that I didn't see previously. And that's almost what that little male looked like he was doing there. It looked like he thought, oh, maybe Mum has found a bit of the carcass that I didn't notice earlier. Let me go and have a look. But I think the fullness of his tummy has made him decide to lie down again. Hilton, you're asking which predator has the highest kill rate. And Hilton, that's a difficult question to answer. There are statistics that say that of the cats, it's a black-footed cat, which is a very small cat that occurs in the more arid regions of Southern Africa, so Northern Cape of South Africa, and I think into Botswana as well. But Hilton, that's not a hard, fast rule, because it very much depends on a number of things. It depends on what the predator is hunting. It depends on what the landscape is, the area where they are, the kind of prey they're hunting. So it's difficult to kind of quantify that and to compare it fairly against others. Well, it's not comparing apples with apples, so to speak. But in terms of the cats, the black-footed cat is the cat species that has been credited with having the highest successful kill rate of the large predators in Africa. And again, this is speaking very broadly because, like we said, it's not really comparing apples with apples. But of the solitary hunters and of the big cats, cheetah are or have been recorded as being the most successful in terms of their hunting success rates. They have been found to, on average, over a number of different study sites, Namibia, Botswana, East Africa, they found to be more successful than leopards and lions. Even prides of lions, single female cheetah, have, in the studies that have been done in those areas, they found that single female cheetah, or single cheetah in general, were more successful than lions and leopards. And on top of that, they found that a mother cheetah with cubs was even more successful in terms of her hunting success. But that study was done in one particular area. So for that specific area, that was what they found. Look at Mom now. Every now and then you might see that she starts to lick the inside of the... Oh, look. See what I said earlier about the peer pressure? The one sibling got up and the other one impulsively did the same. So a little bit of competition between the two youngsters, but then once they start to feed, they pretty much leave each other alone and stick to their own part of the carcass. Now, I said that Mom looked like she was licking. So inside that body cavity, there might be bits of blood that is kind of draining out of the arteries and the veins, and she would have been lapping that up. Cheetah, like many large carnivores, they don't need to drink as often as many herbivorous species do, and they can often subsist for days on just the blood of their prey. Oh, look at this youngster. It's grabbed hold of the duiker's face. And again, even though it's got a full belly, even though this duiker is long dead, look at how it's busy practicing that bite hold on the duiker's throat. Looking through my binoculars, it looks like those bones, like they've already cleaned up those larger leg bones that I was talking about earlier. Looks like the femurs have been cleaned of meat. Alright, I think we're getting close to the end, everybody, in terms of this carcass. We're at minute number 43, and when you come back to us, we'll see how much progress they've made.
Sure sounds like some crazy action on the other side there. But in the meantime, these little ones have just been doing a lot more burrow maintenance, been digging like crazy, and that may be an indication that the alpha female could even move the pups. So when we say move the pups, this burrow system has got probably 20 different entrances. So it's not that they're going to move them away from these burrows, but they'll just take them out of the one burrow into another burrow, but within the same system. And that's almost certainly for parasite loads. But coming back to one of the questions earlier in terms of if a meerkat in a group like this is not habituated, how will that affect the rest of the group? Well, it will definitely affect the rest of the group. And that's why this little alpha female that's sitting closest to me here, she is fantastic in terms of our presence. She's very, very, very relaxed, and she'll come right up to us. We could walk closer to her, but we're not going to do that. We'd rather give them space. But the reason we give them space is that you don't want to affect their behavior in any way. But secondly, we know for a fact that one of them in this group is not relaxed. He's getting better by the day, but there'll be that like cusp where he's just getting better. And if you try to get closer, you think, oh, it should be okay now, and you go closer, it'll reset it back to square one. And we don't want to do that. That our objective here is to observe these animals going about their normal daily business without worrying about us or reacting to us in any way. And I think we're achieving that very, very well at the moment. But it's always frustrating, especially with the smaller the group of meerkats. So if you've got 2 or 3 meerkats that you've been following around, and a very nervous one joins up with them, sure, that can really set the work back a long way. So that's a little alpha female going right out in front there. And remember, we've said that she'll often be the first one out, just not necessarily because she knows where to go, well, that too, but also she needs to get enough sustenance to be able to produce milk for these little pups.
Well, so we have here a couple of wonderful nyalas who were feeding on a branch very close to our vehicle, but then as we decided to show them on the screen, they got a bit shy and they started to move away. So there's a mother and a young male, which is just moving off the screen to the right. We came to this high area in order to look for this female leopard that's often frequenting this area, and we found these 2 nyala looking quite nervous, staring in one direction, but then they seemed to calm down and start moving off. As we know, it's been very windy, so they've been quite nervous the last few days, but now they're starting to relax again. So I know you can't really see them very well. I'm going to move back slightly. I know I'm not supposed to, but let's just see if we can get another view of them. If we get, oh, there they come out into the little bit of the open there. Yeah, so you can see that young male there with his tiny little horns and the beautiful colors on their coat. Nice orange coat with the white stripes and dots on them, fluffy tail, and then a dark stripe on its back, which the males will often raise up when they try to make themselves look larger to impress the females. He's a bit young to be impressing any females, and there's only his mother around, so not much to impress. So he's feeding. So these are nyala, so they are mostly browsing, but they are mixed feeders. So this nyala will also eat grass when it's good, but right now the leaves are much tastier than the dry grass that you see all around us. Look at her ears, constantly swiveling back and forth. Of course, they're going to go behind some branches, where that goes to show us their amazing camouflage. So with that camouflage, they stay hidden, and with those big ears, they're able to listen out for anything that might be approaching them in the thick, dense environments that they usually live in. So you can see they're not really choosing one particular direction. They're just wandering about, feeding on whatever they can find. Feeding is still good, especially on these rocky areas. There seems to be water trapped under the surface by these rocks, which keeps the trees at least fairly green. Oh, that's beautiful. So this young male nyala will actually change color dramatically as he gets older. Once he reaches his full adult stage, you'll see his fur will turn almost as dark as that mane on its back, which is amazing. You know, they say that nyala have the greatest difference between males and females as adults of all the antelopes. So the male nyala will be about twice the size of the female. So this one is still fairly young, under a year old. And he'll still keep those orange socks that you can just about see there. Now they're going behind some branches again. I might just try and see if I can move back just a little bit more to see if we can get one last look at them before they go a little bit too far for us. I don't know, Gerrit, if we're going to be able to see them from there. Just through the branches. I mean, the camouflage is incredible, but they are moving quite far away from where we are now. They're going to keep feeding around, and we're probably going to stay up on this high area just to listen out for any last sounds. We've had quite an interesting morning. We actually did find a drag mark where it looks like hyenas might have stolen someone's kill. We followed it on foot and we didn't find anything there. They must have finished it during the night. And of course, lots of lion tracks moving about during the night as well. Maybe that's why these Nyala were a bit alert. But for now, I'm going to move us forward again one more time just to see if we can see them. While we do that, you guys must enjoy this beautiful bushveld scene.
It's very interesting. So one of our young cheetahs looks like it started to groom itself. Have a look in the front there. That little youngster. And we've spoken quite extensively about the tongue of the cheetah and the little hooks that it will use to clean itself. That's what he's busy doing. Angela, you're asking how often cheetah will kill an animal of this size. Angela, it will depend on if it's a male cheetah, a female cheetah, a coalition of male cheetahs. So typically a coalition of males, so a group of male cheetah, Angela, they will often hunt larger animals, whereas a female cheetah, who will always be alone unless she's with her cubs, they will normally kill smaller animals. And Angela, this size Dacre is within kind of the average size range for a female cheetah. So she'll be looking for things as small as even like a scrub hare, but up to as big as maybe an impala ram or a female Nyala. So pretty frequently, because obviously the smaller, because there's always a trade-off, Angela. Is the prey big enough to give me enough food to warrant my expenditure of energy? But at the same time, is the prey going to be worth my while and worth the risk of me attacking it? Because the bigger the prey, the more potentially dangerous it'll be for this cheetah to tackle. If she tries to tackle a fully grown impala ram, which might be heavier than she is, if she gets kicked or if she gets a horn into her body from that ram, it could be fatal for her. And in this case here, where she's got little cubs, if it's fatal for her, it could be fatal for her youngsters too. See how those youngsters that youngster has shifted the carcass, she's pulled it around, probably trying to get to some of the parts of the carcass that they haven't been able to reach yet because of the way the carcass has been lying. And like I said, they are getting to the end of the carcass, so they're having to really kind of search all over it, looking for the last little bits of meat. It's like if any of you have ever eaten chicken wings or chicken drumstick or ribs, and when especially if it's a very tasty chicken wing or chicken drumstick or a very tasty rib that you're eating, you'll kind of have to get the main parts of the meat off, and then you've got to do a bit more work to get the little scraps off at the end. Have a look at this young female on the right. She stepped away from the carcass again, giving her brother a chance to feed. Look at that tummy of hers. It's not super swollen, but it's got a bit of a bloat to it. So she's got a bit of food in that tummy. There's definitely room for more though. I just love how elegantly she moves with that tail. So long and graceful. Alright everybody, we are sitting on minute 52 and we'll send you across to Barney for now, who's got some tracks to show you.
So we've been trying to keep up with that young male that we had earlier, and now we come down to the crossing and we see that the rest of the pride tracks have crossed down here. They're heading straight across the riverbed to the south. He was slightly on the right track, trying to cross the river, maybe to link up with them. He was just slightly further up. So what we're gonna do now, we're not gonna follow these tracks now. We're gonna drive back towards the leopard to see what that leopard has been doing, and see if there's a little bit more action there. And we wish him luck. If he carries on in the direction that he was facing earlier on, he might be able to catch up with them. But for now, we'll go back to the leopard.
Ah, she's standing up. Look at that belly, everyone. Look at that belly. We made it back to Ribbon. We couldn't see the elephants. So I just thought it was time to come back because I really, really want to know the story. She urinated as she was sleeping, which is not very pleasant, but it does emphasize the point I was saying about parasite load building up and it gets dirty, and that's why they do move dens frequently once the cubs get older. Oh, she's not comfortable. Oh. If I did not know that Ribbon had just eaten an impala, I would suggest she swallowed a giraffe in there. That belly is huge. She's very uncomfortable, but this is typical. This is really, really typical. And luckily, it's not a very hot day today. So she's probably just going to lie there all day. I'm just puzzled. Her nipples are still very prominent. I just don't know why she would rest here without seeing the cubs. They're 3 months now. They're getting bigger. They're getting demanding. They've got lots of energy. They need to expend that energy. They need to run around. And slowly but surely, they're going to start to come out of the den that they are in and start to go against mum's wishes and explore. And that's the dangerous part. Because when they're younger, they will only leave the den, the safety of the den, and respond to mum calling. But when they get older, they start to defy mum. And when mum's not there, when she's hunting or she's somewhere else, they'll start to come out and do their own thing. They won't go too far. And that's the dangerous thing in case another predator comes by. She keeps looking in this den. That's what I love about out here. You've got to unravel the mysteries. But don't forget, everyone, to keep sending in your questions. #WildEarth. You can ask us anything you want to know about the environment out here. And Ribbon sleeping, well, in her pee. Ribbon. There's some cookie. Stained with blood. She won't go too far from this carcass, though, I don't think. She'll try and claim it as her own for most of the day, which is a good thing. It means she'll still be here in the afternoon, I hope. Hyenas, despite their reputation, are said to be some of the most efficient carnivores that exist. Claudia, because hyenas have such a extended lactation period, which can go up to 2 years. Normally it's around 1.5 years, but it can extend to 2 years, and that's a long time to be lactating and have cubs depend on you. So round about the 2-year mark, males can start to disperse as cubs. If they're males, they can start to leave the clan between 2 to 2.5 years. The females obviously stick around. They stay within the same clan and they don't really start to become sexually mature till about 3. So I would say once a hyena has successfully raised cubs to around about 2 years, any time after that she can come into estrus and fall pregnant again. But it really does depend. If she loses cubs early on, then of course that means she'll come into estrus much sooner. they've got to stay strong in order to lactate for up to 2 years. And that's because the milk is so rich. It's incredibly rich. And although cubs will start to dabble with meat before 1.5 years, the milk keeps them nice and strong and healthy. And hyena mating is so rare to see. It has been captured. I think you can search for it on YouTube, but it's a really rare occurrence. Of course, we are nearing the latter part of the drive, so I am going to stay here and wait and see what happens with Miss Ribbon.
So these little meerkats are very, very, very close to leaving the burrows now. I reckon in the next 10-15 minutes they're going to be out of here. And what is interesting, if they go east, that means that they could actually encounter one of those other meerkat groups that was in the area last night. And that'll almost certainly be an aggressive encounter just because of the fact that she's got these pups over here. James has just asked, what is the furthest distance that a dispersal meerkat has been recorded from its natal group? James, I don't have an answer for you on that. I'll have to check that up. But it will be a considerable distance, I reckon a couple of kilometers. But I'd have to check that out and just see. And there's a lot of factors that would influence that. I think the primary one being again, it comes back to the quality of the habitat. So if you've got really, really good habitat quality, in other words, like abundance of food, plenty of shelter, the likelihood of an animal dispersing very far is less, but not necessarily the case. And if you look at, if you make a comparison there with things like leopards, even in good quality habitat, I mean, leopards can disperse, young males can disperse over hundreds of kilometers, literally. That's obviously definitely not the case with meerkats, but it's just an interesting comparison there. But certainly, I think over a couple of kilometers wouldn't be unusual. But I will actually check that out, and I'll see if we can actually get a figure on that maximum distance. It'll be very interesting to see.
We are back with our leopard from earlier. He seemed to have decided to go up a tree again. Looking around with a lot of grey go-away birds making noise and giving his position away. He doesn't seem to be liking that much. However, even if that is the case, he's just sitting 1.5 meters above the carcass that he had earlier on. He's just looking around. Doesn't look like he's gonna come down off this tree anytime soon. So from when we were with him earlier, when he was right on the base trying to get ready to jump off, if that line that was could have come close, he's now found another completely different branch and he's just dozing off. You can see every now and again his eyes are starting to close up. It looks like he's really, really tired. But birds make noise and he's supposed to look on that direction because that could mean that something is walking on the ground, in which case he needs to know. There goes the grey go-away bird again. David and Sophia, leopards are solitary animals because the way they hunt, they don't live in families. They only stick together when they're young. And these shy creatures that need to try and hide away their presence walk through thick bush where not so many things will be able to stalk them. And when they hunt, Unlike lions that need each other to be able to surround their prey, they use a method called stalk and pounce. And they can hide better when they are alone compared to if they were together in a group. So both male and female, unless it's a male and female mating or mother with cubs, they always stay alone because they try to be as discreet as possible. Hence why the habitat they like, thick riverine areas, like we've seen where we have been driving around this morning, trying to keep up with him, all the way up to when he's sitting here. The bush is nice, green and lush, and this is the typical type of habitat that leopards would like. Come on, go away, bird. He's just trying to take a nap and you're making a noise again. It's so peaceful out here. If the go-away birds and the spare fowls or franklins are not making any noise, you can hardly hear any other noise. Hello. This looks like something he moved on the grass that got a bit of his attention. Look at how focused he is. See something on the grass. Either it's this breeze that has just blown and picked up something that might not be necessarily imported. It looks like he's gonna settle down again, so we'll send you over to go see someone else who is busy napping in this late hour of the morning.
You very, very sleepy hyena. And she's probably going to sleep for the rest of today. Rest and digest, as we say. And as the sun starts to go down this evening, I think she'll start to get active again. Depending on who visits this area. Excuse me, I just sneezed. Cheryl, very good question. You're asking, could the cubs possibly have overeaten and maybe sleeping in the den? Very good question. Eaten the carcass? No. 3 months old? No. Suckled from ribbon? Possibly, but I don't see how we would have missed this. We were actually at this den and we did a big loop once James radioed us and told us where to look for the hyena that stole the impala. And I really don't think we were too far behind her. I could be wrong, but we followed the drag marks and it led us here. If the cubs were here, I think they would be out by now, Cheryl. They would be leaping and bounding around this den. I don't think they're here. But I've spent the past 3 days now looking at dens, and I just can't think where else they would be. It's a little bit of worry that Ribbons came here to this specific den where they were not so long ago, and they're not here. I hope nothing bad has happened. Ribbon could just be taking a pit stop. This was the safest place to bring the carcass and just take a little bit of a rest before being mama again. But still, we're going to sit here for a little bit longer just in case anything happens.
Wow, so we have been searching high and low this morning for these elephants who have been evading us. Usually they're always close to the camp, and right now they've found themselves right here in these thick sicklebush areas. So what we're going to do is we're going to stick with them and see what they do. I'm going to drive forward just a tiny bit so we can try and get a better view of them. But it's the whole herd. They're very spread out at the moment. There's some all the way on the other side of this drainage line, and there's some right here in front of us. Let me move forward just slightly. There's one just on the left of the road here. Seems to be using its tusks. grab some of the branches and bark. And there's a little baby following its mother right behind us to the right. See how it curls its trunk? Oh, this elephant's got a bit of a damaged trunk. You see that? The end of its trunk seems to have a bit of damage there. This can happen for all sorts of reasons, but it looks like it seems to have figured out how to use it without stopping it from feeding. It's obviously doing very well. Oh, that's so interesting. This can happen, you know, I've actually seen elephants getting caught at waterholes by a crocodile, just nipping the end of the trunk there. And, you know, crocodiles have some of the strongest bite forces of all the animals, so that could have been what happened there. See, it's just using the end of its trunk just to flick away at the grass to try and get some of those seeds off so it can get some of the nutritious grass stems. I love watching how they feed, how good they are at manipulating the grasses and using that trunk just to get to what they need. And you know, they don't see very well, these elephants. So often what they're doing is they're smelling the grasses and they're smelling what's good. This elephant looks like a young male. Probably, I don't know, 7, 8 years old, maybe a little bit older, maybe a bit younger. It's difficult to tell at times. Oh, he's showing us his bum now. Just to the right of the road here, there's a whole family of some youngsters. Looks like there's a mother as well. So this young elephant that you can see, it's actually got very, very tiny tusks. They've just started erupting out of its body. I'm going to move forward again slightly, a little bit more. So now, when the tusks first start erupting out, let's say that's about 3 years old. So this one might be a little bit over 3. Right. Now we're a bit closer to our friend here on the left. Can you see him there, Gert? I think you can. It's not so far away from us. You see that, how it uses its trunk to reach right in the base there. You see that? Those grasses there have been sheltered and protected from the sun, so they might still be a little bit greener and more nutritious than the other grasses that you find around here. Patty Pan has asked a question about the calf just to the right of us, and will it stay with its mother forever? Well, certainly, if it's a female, it might stay with its mother for most of its life. If it's a male, probably not. If it's a male, it will only stay with this group until it's about in its early teen years, and then the mother will probably chase it away because it'll get a bit too aggressive, a bit too forceful with the other members of the herd, especially the females, when he starts to become a little bit sexually active. But I can't tell, I don't know if you can, no, it's a bit too thick in there. I'll try and go forward a little bit more, just to see if we can see if this is a male or a female. Since these elephants are so lovely and relaxed with us. But yes, if it's a female, it will stay forever. Oh, Striped Horses asked how far an elephant will walk in a day. Well, that's a good question. It depends entirely on what they need to get, water and food-wise. So these elephants, I know, do often travel from one of the water holes to the other easily in a day, and feeding all the way in between. That's 2 kilometers. And I've seen on other reserves, elephants are sometimes walking about 10 or 15 kilometers in the day, just because, you know, about 6 kilometers an hour is what they walk at, maybe a little bit faster than that. So it would not take them very long at all. If they were on a mission to get to water that was very far, they could probably walk 30, 40 kilometers in a day. But luckily here, we've got plenty of water around. They don't need to be moving so far. Look at this one right next to us here. I know it's going to be a bit of a trick for you to swing around there, but it's doing something very interesting. It was using its foot to move the branches. Look at that. See that? It's using its feet to move the branches so that it can get to the grasses that are a little bit more difficult to get to. You often find that elephants will push over a tree, and then the tree branches will actually shelter the grass from being damaged by other animals. And then sometime later the elephant will come along, or a different elephant, will come along and actually push that whole tree back over to get to the grasses that it's now protected. Oh, this is a beautiful young male. Oh, hey, how are you doing? Good morning to you. It's actually amazing to see this young male elephant so relaxed as well. Often they'll try and show off their size and strength by, trying to, how can I say, display for us, opening its ears, flapping its trunk, and it's shaking its head. But this one, so relaxed. I think right now it's just very hungry. The end of this tusk has a little notch in it. All right. And this notch they'll often use when they break branches. But what we're going to do now is, whilst we watch these elephants relaxing here, guys, we're going to send you over to some lazy cheetahs.
Just the one youngster still feeding on this Jackal carcass, and we are currently, for those of you that have been keeping track, we are at 1 hour and 15 minutes since they started to feed on this Jackal. And let's have a close look, everybody. So we'll use our binoculars or use the zoom of the camera to zoom in. Look at that youngster, how it's busy feeding on the bits of meat still attached to the inside of the skin of that Jackal. So having to work now to get every last little bit of morsel, or every last little morsel of meat that they can. Have a look on the left, see how Mom has taken herself away from the kill. She's decided she's had enough for now, leaving her youngsters to feed. Sassy Cassie, you're asking when vultures will start to move into the area to finish off the Jackal. Sassy Cassie, remember earlier I was saying how that vulture wasn't really able to, or wouldn't be getting airborne for quite some time because of the cloud cover. There wouldn't be any thermals rising, and there's no wind. Both the wind and the thermals will help that vulture, that very heavy bird, to fly. So, Sassy Cassie, I think it'll be quite a while still before the vultures start to get active and start to fly around, if all of this cloud cover burns off. But to be honest, Sassy Cassie, I think that there's such a little amount of meat left on this carcass. I don't think that it'll even be worth their while for them to come and investigate. Other birds that eat carrion might come to investigate things like Battalier eagles and pied crows, both of which being much smaller than vultures and not being as heavily reliant on thermals and wind for them to fly around. And they might discover the carcass, they might move in and feed as well a little bit later once these cheetah have left. And I think that that's what's going to happen pretty soon. I think that once they've finished eating, Mom will lead her youngsters a little distance away from this carcass. The smell of blood might attract the unwanted attention of bigger predators. And so they'll move away and groom each other and rest. Start to digest that food. Ziggy, you're asking at what age these two cheetah cubs will leave their mother. Ziggy, probably at about 18 months or so. That is normally when cheetah will go independent of their mother. And often what happens is that Mom will kill something like she's done now, and she'll just leave them. She'll walk away. While the youngsters are feeding, they'll be so engrossed in the food that they might not notice that Mom's gone. And suddenly, once they stop eating, they'll realize, oh, hang on, we've been left alone. And Mom will just keep on walking. The youngsters will keep calling for her. And then that'll be it. All right. So we're currently sitting at 1 hour and 20 minutes, and that's how long they've been feeding. And it looks like it's pretty much done. But I think we've had a fantastic morning, everybody. We set out, even from last night, to try and find these cheetah with the object of watching them eat and hunt, and we were successful. Don't forget to join us this afternoon on our sunset safari, coming to you at 3 p.m.